When Americans first arrive in Australia, many describe one immediate difference before they can fully articulate anything else about the place. It feels slower, not broken or stalled or lacking in some functional way, just slower in a way that registers in the body before the mind catches up. People walk slower through public spaces without appearing to be in any hurry to correct that. Conversations unfold at a pace that does not seem driven by efficiency. The social energy in a room feels less urgent, less loaded, less pointed toward any particular outcome. There is no visible collective rush, and at first, that slower pace can feel genuinely unproductive to someone arriving from a culture where speed is so deeply normalized, it has become invisible. You look around and find yourself wondering what everyone is waiting for, why no one seems to be moving with intention. It takes time to understand that they are moving with intention. The intention is simply different from the one you were trained to recognize as valid. That realization does not come quickly. It arrives gradually, usually sometime after the discomfort of the slowness stops feeling like a problem you need to solve. In the United States, speed often functions as a form of currency. Fast replies signal respect and reliability. Fast service signals competence. Fast decisions signal confidence and leadership. Urgency is not just tolerated in American culture, it is actively rewarded. It gets you promoted. It earns you a reputation. It communicates that you take things seriously, that you are someone who understands what is at stake. Over time, living inside that system reshapes your baseline. The urgency stops feeling like pressure and starts feeling like normal. It becomes the water you swim in, invisible precisely because it is constant. You do not notice the low hum of ambient stress it generates because you have never experienced its absence. Your nervous system adapts by treating high stimulation as the default and anything below it as suspicious. So when the urgency is removed or even just reduced, the absence does not feel like relief. It feels like something is wrong. Like the environment is sending you a signal you do not know how to read. That confusion is not weakness. It is simply the predictable response of a system that was calibrated to a different normal and has not yet been given enough time or contrast to recalibrate. In Australia, urgency is not the default social setting. That distinction sounds simple, but its effects run deeper than most people expect before they experience it firsthand. Public spaces feel less intense in a way that is difficult to quantify but easy to feel. People are not constantly signaling productivity through their posture, their pace, or the visible busyness of their expression. There is less of the ambient performance that Americans absorb so completely, it stops registering as performance at all. The coffee shop does not feel like a competition. The sidewalk does not feel like a race. Interactions in everyday settings do not carry the low-grade pressure to be efficient, impressive, or visibly engaged with something important. That difference lowers tension in ways that are subtle enough to miss consciously, but significant enough for your body to register. Your shoulders drop slightly. Your jaw unclenches a degree. The constant low-level scanning for social cues that demand a response begins to quiet. None of this is dramatic. It does not feel like a revelation. It feels more like a slow exhale you did not realize you had been holding. And that exhale, quiet and unremarkable as it is, turns out to be more significant than it first appears. For some Americans, this shift in baseline does not feel like relief in the beginning. It feels uncomfortable in a way that is hard to defend to someone who has not experienced it. Slower can feel inefficient when your entire framework for evaluating environments treats speed as a proxy for health and function. Calm can feel like something is missing rather than something being offered. When your nervous system has been calibrated to a high level of daily stimulation, a reduction in that stimulation does not feel like rest. It feels like absence. Like a frequency you were used to hearing has dropped out and left a silence that your brain keeps trying to fill. You find yourself creating urgency where none exists, moving faster than the space requires, feeling vaguely restless in situations that are objectively fine. That restlessness is not a character flaw. It is a withdrawal symptom of sorts. The body was running on a stress level it had normalized as baseline, and when that stress level drops, the system does not immediately read the drop as good. It reads it as unfamiliar. And unfamiliar, for a nervous system trained on American pace, tends to feel like a problem before it ever begins to feel like a gift. Social pressure also shifts in ways that go beyond pace and into identity. In America, a person's sense of self is often significantly tied to output. Career title, professional ambition, visible drive, and the performance of being someone who is going somewhere all carry real social weight. The first question at a dinner party is frequently what you do. The answer shapes how the conversation proceeds. It signals income, education, status, and trajectory in ways that have become so embedded in American social culture that most people no longer notice how much of their self-presentation is organized around those signals. In Australia, that dynamic is noticeably different. Social status is downplayed more openly and more consistently. There is a strong cultural resistance to overt self-promotion. Talking extensively about your professional achievements can read as try hard rather than impressive. There is less visible pressure to signal how busy you are, how in demand your time is, or how important your work makes you. For some Americans, that shift comes as genuine relief. The performance requirement drops and something underneath it relaxes. For others, it creates a quiet disorientation. The usual tools for establishing social standing simply do not function the same way, and finding new ones takes longer than expected. Over time, many Americans who have spent extended periods in Australia report something they did not anticipate when they arrived. They feel lighter, not happier in some dramatic or transformative sense, just lighter in the way that suggests something they were carrying has been set down without ceremony. Lower background stress that they only recognize in retrospect because it had been so consistent for so long that it registered as normal rather than as a burden. Fewer daily micro-pressures accumulating across interactions, commutes, and social performances they did not realize required so much energy to maintain. The nervous system, given a calmer and less demanding social environment to operate in, gradually adapts to the lower baseline. It stops bracing. It stops running the constant background process of scanning for urgency signals that require a response. That adaptation does not happen in the first week or even the first month. It happens slowly, in the background, the way your eyes adjust to a different quality of light. And then one day you notice that you have not felt that particular tightness in a while, that the city around you has stopped feeling like something you need to keep up with. And you realize the difference was not in you. It was in the volume of the environment around you. Slower does not mean lazy. That distinction matters more than it might seem because the conflation of the two is exactly what makes the adjustment hard for so many Americans in the beginning. Laziness is a value judgment about motivation and character. Slower is a description of pace. The two have no necessary connection. Calmer does not mean unmotivated. It does not mean disengaged or indifferent to outcomes. It means the social baseline is set at a different level, and the energy that in America gets spent performing urgency gets directed elsewhere or simply conserved. For some Americans, Australia ends up feeling mentally healthier, not because the country is objectively superior in any measurable sense, but because the volume of daily urgency is turned down to a level their nervous system can sustain without cost. The threshold for what requires stress is recalibrated. And in that recalibration, they discover something worth sitting with, that a significant portion of the pressure they carried back home was not coming from their actual circumstances. It was coming from the ambient noise of a culture that had collectively agreed to treat urgency as identity. The real question, then, is a simple one. When the pace slows and the noise drops, do you experience that as loss, or do you finally recognize it as relief?